It is catastrophic. It's catalytic. I can't even begin to explain how horrific the situation is.
This is Dr. Saya Aziz. She's an Australian anesthesiologist who's in Gaza right now treating patients alongside Palestinian healthcare workers. She filmed this video with her Australian colleague outside al-Shifa hospital in northern Gaza.
I had a beheaded lady who's 9 months pregnant that we had to deliver her by an emergency C-section.
Dr. Aziz says she's shocked at what she's seen so far. I spoke to her during one of the brief periods where she had internet access to hear more about what she's witnessed while treating patients in Gaza. What is it that compelled you to go to Gaza knowing the risks?
I have been watching the reels, the videos, the Instagram posts endlessly for the last 2 years. And for me, I'm not only a doctor and a healthcare worker, I have 2 small children, and, you know, watching videos of children has been devastating, and knowing that they're facing such trauma, they're starving, they're hungry. And then, you know, my children, you know, would ask for a cup of water and I would jump up and give it to them. I felt I needed to go and bear witness. I have the privilege of being a qualified professional. I'm not even a trainee, that I had to go and bear witness. Of course, it was going to be hard to leave. I didn't realize it was going to be as dangerous. If I say to you, it's been thousands of times worse than what I've seen on the videos, it's been 100,000 times worse. I've not been able to process it, in the sense that I'm here, I've come to do a job. I'm not here to add to their burden of sorrow, when they're the ones who are continuing on in spite of the horror. Each and every case, everyone would say it would be hopeless in any other, you know, first world country. And yet they continue. Every soul to them matters. Like, I've been shocked at how persistent they are at saving every human life. And for me, it's been the best decision I've ever made to come here, in spite of knowing I've left my family, my children. But, you know, there's no other option for me than to have come in. I feel privileged. It's my first time that I've come here, and I feel lucky and privileged to be amongst these noble people. You hear about the Palestinian resilience. They are the most resilient people, and, you know, they practice gratitude. We just finished a case, another. I've lost count of how many amputations we've done, traumatic amputation above knee. Why we're doing it, and the patient is alive, the family was grateful. Everything you do, and it's alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'll say, oh, but his arms, I'm like, they're still, he still has his arms. One is broken, but he's still and they're like, alhamdulillah. Everything is, thank goodness. Everyone was friendly. I felt very safe. I felt very welcomed. Everyone smiles. Everyone says, you know, thank you for coming. So, you know, as a foreigner, I felt like I betrayed them. They would see us as part of the group of people who've betrayed them, that they're the forgotten people. But they were so welcoming and thankful that we have come, in spite of the danger to us, when, you know, I have an international passport. I am protected. They aren't.
Can you walk me through your first moments arriving in Gaza and what struck you most?
What struck me most was that when I got through the crossing into Gaza, that is when I took a sigh of relief. I suddenly felt, strangely, I felt safe. And I thought, how strange, I've come into a war zone, and that's when I felt safe. Number 2 is we were taken to Shuhada al-Aqsa, which is where we stayed, which is a hospital in the south, where in theory it's, you know, much better than here.
You're currently at Shifa Hospital, right?
Yeah. So we spent 3 days in Al-Aqsa because we had to wait for a UN convoy. The first 3 days we had 3 bombs just outside the hospital door every single day, bombing just outside the hospital. Like, you feel the whole building rattle and shake. And then within 5 minutes, the bodies come flooding in. And this is not just these weapons, people who have thought of such weapons, who've invented such weapons, what kind of human being thinks of shredding body parts in the way it does. There's even bullets that once they get into the human body, they can detonate any single time. They're so tiny you can't even see them. The number of burst abdomens, they open the abdomen, there's holes everywhere, and the tiny piece is not even a millimeter in depth, and it's completely destroyed the bowel. And these patients have open abdomens and left on the wards. There's no nursing staff. The patients are distraught. They're looking for healthcare workers, but the healthcare workers themselves are in the same situation. We literally had the director of the hospital lose all of his children 2 days ago. We had a nurse who literally, they said, was I think he was in the A&E, and he literally, his wife, his son, daughter died, and he has one remaining son who's full of burns. He can't open his eyes. We don't know if he's lost his vision. He's got broken bones. Who's going to look after these children? Who's going to look after Mohammed and his broken legs and his burnt face? No one to look after him in the sweaty, dirty, filthy wards. And the tragedy is that healthcare workers are distraught because what you see now isn't what Gaza was. All the equipment I recognize, it's exactly what we have in Australia. It's the same pieces of equipment, except they've been using it relentlessly for 2 years, and they've actually had to rescue some of it from when it was bombed in the main state-of-the-art hospital.
You're an anesthesiologist and you're seeing an overwhelming amount of trauma injuries. Do you have the proper medicine and drugs to sedate these patients that need to be operated on?
No, I am an anesthetist, and my main priority is the patient to be anesthetized. The drugs are expired. I'm literally guesstimating. I'm just basically relying on clinical skills and crossing my fingers and relying on their skill set. They have had to anesthetize patients without literally the basic standards for anesthesia. They wake up in pain. I don't have any fentanyl to give them. Morphine is literally titrated. In Al-Aqsa, they had no syringes. I had to use syringes, the same syringe I've used on other patients, to the next repeat patient. Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Bomb?
I think so. I heard something.
And that's a quiet one. That's far. That's far. I know now that's far. That's not nearby. And so I'm having to reuse syringes on patients. I'm doing what I can with the limited equipment. But the main thing I need is sterility. We're doing these operations on patients who are literally have 100% infection rate. There's flies everywhere, flies in wounds. Literally shooing the flies. I had Mohammed, my 10-year-old burns patient. He's in his closed eyes, burnt face. He's just in his drowsiness was asking me to shoo the flies away. He could feel the flies on his skin. That is just not what any human should not be treated like that. They are human. As much as the outside world has tried to dehumanize them, they are more human than anything I have witnessed in the outside world. No healthcare worker in first world country would ever turn up to work for free. They are turning up for free. They're not getting paid. But you see the sorrow and in their eyes. They're having to leave their children in a tent. They're leaving their children and they're walking all that way, leaving at 5 a.m. to get for a 9 o'clock shift. And I'm like, why don't you just go stay? Like, just go. Then you just close the hospital. They said, but who's going to save these souls? If I don't turn up, who will?
What is your understanding of why these basic necessities like syringes, like medicine, like anesthetic are missing at the hospital?
If there's no food coming in, if you've got no syringes, no medicines, what does that do? Is that a direct way of killing people? No, you can say you didn't directly kill them. They just died of disease. Well, who created this disease? They had sanitation, they had running water, they had air conditioning, they had ventilation. Who is preventing the equipment coming in? Now, we all know who's stopping them. We need aid to come in and we need the bombs to stop. They don't need help. They just need people to leave them in peace.
It strikes me as a bit of a cruel game that Israel will say, okay, you highly skilled Western doctors, we will let you come and work in Gaza for 5-6 weeks, but you basically have nothing to work with. Like it's difficult for me to wrap my mind around this. I
am having to tolerate standards that in any other world I would not tolerate. And it is unjust and unfair because Mohammed deserved a decent anesthetic like any other burns patient. This is not a burns in his home from a toaster that was plugged in and faulty. This is a group of people throwing the most vicious, violent, catastrophic weapons that you can ever think of that are being tested on Palestinians because it's a laboratory. The Palestinians themselves, the Gazans, know each and every weapon. They'll tell you, no, this hasn't been used before. This is a new weapon. The worst thing is you walk through the emergency department and you don't know where to look. There's toddlers crying. You'll go and speak to them. You'll say, are you the mother? No, her mother's just been bombed. Her father's been bombed. They're all dead. I'm the neighbor. We've just retrieved her. We've only been here, if you think about it, a fraction of the 2 years. And there's a beheaded mother, a decapitated mother, 9 months pregnant. In fact, one of the first days I did an amputation on a woman who was 6 months pregnant. She lost her right arm. She lost both of her legs. And she's 6 months pregnant, and that's survivable. That child will live and will continue on. But how will that mother look after the baby? How will she survive her wounds? Will she miscarry in the interim? What kind of nutrition is she going to get? She has other children to look after. Like, who's looking after her? How is the husband or family member going to look after her and look after all the children?
Were you able to speak to that mother?
I don't know where they go. I don't know where they go. We literally put them in the corridor, hope someone's going to look after them. There's no nursing staff. There's no recovery. It's the same corridor that's filled with flies. I wish there's so much lost in video. There's the smells, the sight, the dust. Everything is covered in thick layers of dust. They want to sweep. They want to mop. There's nothing. I wasn't able to talk to her, but when I can, I try and find them. But I can't even get through a corridor because you literally get stopped by everyone. And they'll say, can you come and see my son? Can you come and see my mother? Can you come and see my wife?
Dr. Aziz, you are describing and witnessing an incredible amount of trauma. And I just want to ask you, how are you doing?
I am doing fine because I've seen the locals coping. And as a doctor, to some degree, you have to dissociate the two. You have to dissociate from your work to real life. I feel like I've been witnessing it for the last 2 years. And for anyone or a doctor who's not been seeing it, I think it would be a shock. There have been some doctors who have come, I've been told, and they were barely able to do one day and they requested to leave. And thankfully, I've not felt that way at all. And I felt if they're having to cope with this and they're witnessing it for 2 years, I think I can cope for 2 weeks. And I felt it's a privilege. I felt it's a privilege that I have been able to witness their soul. I've never felt a more spiritual group of human beings than I have in Gaza. The staff are phenomenal in the emergency department. They're phenomenal in the theatres. I have never seen procedures performed at the speed of light, not even in the highest performing trauma hospital that I have worked at. They are insane, like in terms of their speed, capabilities. They're like, well, we've had to. If we don't learn how to do this, no one else will do it. Every single person I know in this hospital has lost at least 1 or 2 family members. They have themselves been injured and they're still working. So who am I to say that I don't have courage or ability to witness such horrors? If my government doesn't want to do anything, then I will. If they don't have the courage to stand up to true and horrible, undescribable horror and evil, then if they don't have the courage, then I will.
Mm-hmm. One of the first things you said in this interview is that you wanted to go to Gaza to bear witness. And as you know, Israel has banned international journalists from going into Gaza and reporting. And so here you are, both a doctor and effectively working as a journalist, relaying to the world what you're seeing. Are you worried that Israel will target you for speaking out?
I hate to say it, but yes, you know, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I want to see them. I don't want to die. But at the same time, if the local, my colleagues, my healthcare workers are staying, then I'm not going to leave them and run for my life when in theory I should be protected. Do I think that they have absolute impunity and feel able to do that and then, you know, ask for forgiveness later or apologize? Yes, we've seen it multiple times, relentlessly for the last 2 years. We have been bombed outside of the hospital. Last night I walked through and in the dust and the rubble, there was, you know, an elderly couple sleeping in the dust and the rubble. And I couldn't stop to ask them their story, because each and every one has a story. And you don't know why the elderly, they respect their elderly. Like in the Western nations, you have elderly patients and everyone thinks, oh, they're elderly, it's okay, they've had a good life. But here, the elderly hold such high level of status that they will do everything to save them. And to have that elderly couple not have anyone there, you don't know their story, but you know. So yeah, I feel obliged to stay. So yeah, I will stay until we have to leave.
You are a mother of 2 young children, as you mentioned, and they're back in Australia. How did you explain to them where you're going and why you have to do it?
Look, they know about what's happening in Gaza because I have taken them to protests when I've been able to. I've spoken to them about what's happening. I've said and you know, it's hard to take a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old to a protest that will last hours. But I explained to them there are some children and mothers and fathers that are being murdered relentlessly in a faraway country. And I say there's some bad guys that are hurting them. And, you know, my daughter has said, are the bad guys here? And as in Australia, and I've had to hold back and say no. So I actually, in fact, didn't tell them, and I haven't told them I've gone to Gaza because I know my 6-year-old would be worried. So I actually said to her that I was going to Jordan on a mission, but being away from them for a month and potentially longer is heartbreaking. But I know they're safe. You know, they're with my husband. Some mothers in Gaza will never see their children again. I think I can cope for a month. They can cope for a month. I'm here to do what I can to bear witness and, you know, to do what our governments should be doing, helping.
If there's one thing you wanted people watching this interview to know and understand about what's happening in Gaza right now and what you're witnessing, what is it?
It's carnage. It's end of days nightmare, apocalyptic nightmare. You walk in and it's like an abattoir. Even an abattoir would have some hygienic methods of killing. They're not animals, they're humans. But you'd look around, you drive around and think it's hopeless. You see the cases, you think it's hopeless. The Gazans don't think it's hopeless. They have life, they have hope. It's not too late. It's definitely not too late. They never look back. They've told me, they said, we don't need help. We just need to be left alone. It's not too late. Stopping the arms, sanctioning Israel. I can guarantee you, if these scenes were reported from Ukraine, there would have been world outrage. Is their blood not as worthy?